For the very first thing that we do today in our very last I Practice Love versus Lack Embodying Heart-Centered Consciousness class, this has been quite a revealing course for me. I have absolutely enjoyed teaching it and being a part of it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to hear if anyone had an experience this week, whether it happened this week or whether it was just an experience that they applied last week's teaching to, that happened at some other point. And that teaching from last week was the history of momentum was our focus last week. And just to kind of recap and bring it to everyone's mind so we're all back on the same page and remembering what that was about, maybe what you did with it, if you had an experience with it, will be more clear in your mind or will come to your mind. Last week that class was the focus on seeing the present moment in its parts. Maybe it had one part, which was you. Maybe it had two parts, which was you and another person. Maybe it had two parts, which was you and nature. Maybe it had two parts, which was you and a fly. These are examples that we had last time. Or maybe it had three people in it and your dog. Or maybe it had three people, your dog, and you also include the environment you were in, which was a bar, or the environment you were in that was some spiritual temple. Whatever it was, every one of these parts, or every constituent, made up the happening, made up the present moment result. And so if any one of those parts was different, the result, the present moment, would have been different. And so the point of this class, the point of that teaching, was to help us get out of our thinking of how it was bad or how it was wrong. When we get into these difficult situations, a difficult present moment, we get stuck in those polarities of how it was wrong. And so if we take it apart and look at each one of the parts, each one of the constituents within the whole, and we see what possibly it could have went through the past day, the past week, the past year, its whole lifetime, its childhood conditioning, in order for it to act the way it acted in that present moment experience. And so whenever we do that for every single one of the parts within the happening, then we can start to see that the happening couldn't have been any other way, and it was just a result of everything that was there. So everything contributes to the happening. And so then therefore, blame or right and wrong or good or bad interpretations of things, which are just polarity, surface level interpretations, doesn't hold up and doesn't make sense anymore. So it can relieve us from those painful interpretations. So I'm wondering, did anyone have a chance to apply that this week?
I'll give it a shot.
Cool.
Take my camera here. A few days ago, I was going down Grant Avenue, and I stopped at a red light I was headed north. And there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars at the intersection who had the green light. As soon as the light turned red for the opposite, or for the crossing traffic, everybody stood still. They didn't approach the intersection. And all of a sudden, this car runs through a red light and goes right through that intersection. And had anybody started in, they would have been hit.
Whoa!
Now that, to me, that's a bad situation. I mean, that's the judgment that I made. It was good that nobody approached the intersection yet, and that allowed the car to go through. So I was just wondering if maybe a superconscious network had a work in that. That maybe the guy that ran through the red light, maybe his subconscious told the others, stay put. don't enter the don't enter
Yeah,
the
I know what you mean.
intersection. No, but then I kept thinking about that, and I tried to remove the judgment of it being a bad situation, and I couldn't really do that. But then at the same time, I thought of a good thing about it was that nobody was hurt.
Well, let me ask you this, Mike.
He was going like 35 miles an hour.
Really?
That's the speed limit for that street. So if just even one person entered the intersection, like I said, that would have been his end, or it would have been very bad condition. And so trying to look at it, I tried to picture in my mind later as if the incident was in the center of the scene, and I was going around in a big circle looking at it from different perspectives like I did with the bench. And I started thinking, well, maybe this guy didn't see the light turn red, or maybe he was one of those that didn't care about it turning red. Maybe he had an emergency that totally blinded his attention to him having the red light, but going through it anyway. There could have been different reasons why
Right.
did that, and trying to put all those reasons together and nobody getting hurt kind of neutralized the situation to where at this point, I no longer pass judgment on him. I mean, it happened, it's done with, and now it's time to move on and hope that it doesn't happen again to anybody.
Right, totally.
Because I was the second car in the intersection.
Oh, man.
So had I been the first one, I usually go at green no matter what happens. But fortunately, I wasn't the first car. I don't know if that qualifies.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a really good example. Because there was a happening, which was the light turned green. People actually didn't go. And then however many seconds later, this guy plowed through the intersection running his red light. And
right.
So it sounded like that at first there was kind of the upsetness about the whole thing. And anytime that there's the upsetness, that's exactly why we would use this kind of stuff so we can actually let go of it and move on with our life, move on with our day. And this sounds like that's what you did, despite it being upsetting at first.
Right. Yeah. Okay, well.
And I know traffic has a thing for you, Mike, because you have traffic incidences a lot.
I'm getting better, though.
Yeah, you are getting better.
I'm trying to respond rather than react.
Uh-huh.
I guess that's it.
Cool. I think that's a great example. Thanks for sharing. Does anyone else
I think a lot of the time, though, we're more like the two gals in the other bench example that you gave in a previous class. You don't know the history. You're stuck with what little information you have and trying to make a judgment based on that may or may not be accurate.
Right. Yeah. Mike didn't have too much to go off of on this one either. I mean, he didn't know at all what that driver's day was like. He didn't know if he was rushing to the hospital for his pregnant wife or dying family member, or if he was running from the police after just stealing whatever, In terms of being able to let go of something that was bothering us and moving on with our life, and then it doesn't really matter what it was. The best option is to see the good in people. But like Carolyn is saying, sometimes we do. Sometimes we don't have a clue of what their past was or what the history was. But sometimes we can have a conversation with them, kind of like Lynn did the other day, and come to the understanding with actual facts. Anything really. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if they're actual. If we can't talk to them, it doesn't actually matter if they're actual facts or not. We just need to be able to let go And we can't let go if we're still interpreting it negatively. It's like giving the forgiveness is for us. Forgiveness is for us. And so we look at things by giving others the benefit of the doubt for ourselves. It's not for them. Does anyone else have an example or anything to say about Mike's? Lynn, I'm looking at you right now for some reason. Do you have an example?
I was just, well, you reminded me, I just wrote, I was thinking still about that conversation from last week.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Well, I guess just not really, no.
Cool.
I don't think I really do.
You had a good one last week.
Talk about that again. I guess it's still, well, what did you just say? If I'm still thinking about it, or the person, it doesn't matter what's facts or what's not, if it still bothers. I think I'm a little bit still bothered. So, I mean, less, but I just think this person and I, we have different ways, or maybe just acceptance that we have different ways of seeing things, and maybe it's a great learning experience. I don't, but it, we're just different. We're different in ways, and that's okay. Just maybe accepting that, not trying to, I want to say smooth over that in the sense of maybe we're just going to see things differently, and that's kind of how we are. Without me trying to change him and him trying to change me.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Yeah. Maybe that's just it.
Yeah.
The value in seeing things differently.
Yeah, just accepting instead of, I think there's a part of me is like, oh, I'm around this person semi a lot. Like I want to make myself like them more or something, or just, or make it different than it is. Like maybe just, okay, I can have maybe a working relationship with this person, or just kind of, yeah. So.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
Well, maybe today's teaching later on will shine some more light on this whole topic.
Okay, sounds good.
Kind of ties everything together.
Cool.
Does anyone else have anything to add? Maybe Mr. Rodney?
Let me get the camera going. Okay, so I think for me, I did think of some history of momentum for things going on around me, but mostly it was like, what is the history of momentum for myself that not necessarily caused me to act the way I act or bring about the present moment, but what is the history of momentum that is active in me that has caused me to attract this set of circumstances into my life? So if that makes any sense, like even though it's like other people doing stuff around me, what's been my trajectory that has attracted that into my life? If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And then with that, it's okay, then also what am I doing in the present moment with that trajectory to help create because this present moment will become the history of momentum for the future. Right? So this, I've got 43 years of momentum behind me. Well, tomorrow I'll have 43 years in one day of momentum, and then 43 years in 2 days. And so what am I doing today and tomorrow to help create a different momentum going forward?
Yeah, totally.
So that's kind of where my thoughts and stuff has been, without getting like into specific examples. But
That's awesome. I love that. And what have you come to as far as what you can do to change your history of momentum?
well, you can't do anything to change the history of momentum.
Right. Right.
So, but well, okay. So awareness of the history of momentum, okay, allows you to see what's going on and decide to either continue that history or maybe make some different choices. Kind of, that's more from a practical or human level, but like more from, I think, a spiritual level would be to again just recognize when you're in the human flow, and the more you can step out of that into like your highest self, or into the more you can step out of that flow and see it different, it just frees you up to make better and different choices, possibly.
Right.
Choices more in alignment with your highest self, or
the goodness of all concerned.
yes, more I'll just say more informed choices, but not from a data perspective. Just more enlightened choices. I guess.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the history, or maybe it's creating new future, or I don't know. But that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I love that. I totally agree. I think it's really important to use all these tools that we've been given in order to let go of everything that moves us and motivates us, and that can be our history of momentum, the thoughts that continue to play again and again in our minds that cause us to do these actions again and again. And it could also be any kind of negative, any kind of thinking that comes up in our thinking. If we're wanting, the point of all these classes has been to be able to not get stuck and to let go. And whenever we completely let go, whether it's in seeing the value in something, whereas before we was resistant against it, when we see the value in something we're resistant against, then it neutralizes it, we can begin to let go. Or whether it's something we really want, we're thinking about it all the time, then by thinking about it all the time, it actually detracts from the quality of our life, not only now, but also in the future when we get it, because we have all these thoughts about the thing, and so we still can't be present with it. And so when we begin to see and let go by using all these tools and become totally present, then at that point when things are really clear and you're looking around and there isn't the thought interpretation of I want that or I don't want this, or which really is history of momentum. When we want something or when we don't want something, it's from the history of momentum of our thoughts, so it's still coming through in our thinking, you could even see it as. Then when we clear that stuff out by neutralizing that stuff and we're looking around clear-mindedly, then all of a sudden, that's the point when we can start making different decisions. That's the point when we can be like, oh, actually that wasn't working out for me. I was doing that for this reason, but it actually doesn't produce what I thought it would, so there's no reason to do that anymore. And so I've given all these different ways of looking at things and kind of different tools in order to realize, instead of like forcefully make a different decision. It's like, oh, I realized this actually doesn't produce what I thought it did. So what do I want to do then? It's not that anymore, because I see clearly that I thought I wanted that thing, but I can see now it's actually detracting from the quality of my life now. So these are hopefully we come to realizations and in a clear mental space to where, yeah, Rodney, we can begin to absolutely make a different choice. Choose that from clear seeing and not from willful, I'm going to choose that. I'm going to choose that. For me, that part just doesn't work. It's like I know what I need to do. I know all the things I'm doing wrong in my life. But whenever I just like force myself, I'm going to do that, no to these things, and I'm going to do that, I can do it for a little while, but it's just not sustainable. Those thoughts still come back in, and I need to understand those thoughts. I need to see the value in those thoughts, or I need to see how those thoughts are a detraction, depending if it's on the positive or the negative side of the polarity. And so I need to come to an understanding of these things versus I'm going to do this for now on. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's like going around the park bench. Actually, it's not unfortunate. Going around the park bench can be part of the experience too, in order for us to get a whole-minded perspective of that way of seeing things, which is really what I just said. It's like coming to a change through understanding is going all the way around the park bench versus the forceful, I'm going to make this choice. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, that's definitely what it's about, Rodney, is making choices that are from clear seeing. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Trying to change it is like trying to turn a car or a bike.
Or a train.
I'm not very good at that either. Especially if it's a real tight thing. It's like I try to force things, and of course that doesn't work.
All right. Cool. Okay. So that was what we did last week with the history of momentum. And this week, how we're going to move forward is I'm going to do, it's not really, usually I always do a recap of what we had done all the previous weeks. And I may end up still doing some little version of that, but what's important is when I go through what we learned in each week to begin to see what the commonalities are, because that's the fascinating thing about what this whole class has been, is each one has been a slightly different approach on neutralizing the polarities in the mind. And so like each week we defined something different that we do in our minds that needs neutralized. And gosh darn it, it's like each one of these things seem like super valuable things, and for us to highlight it as lack all of a sudden is such a trip to the mind. But they need neutralized. They're a detraction when they go overboard. It's like there's a place for planning in our lives, but if we were constantly planning, then our life would never move forward. There's a place for understanding something, but if we're constantly trying to understand something, then that's all that our mind is doing. Or if we're constantly thinking about the past, referring to the past, constantly considering the past as how we referred to it in one class, then we're constantly bringing the past into the present. And so there's a need to neutralize this. There's a need to define what that activity of our mind has been, what that activity of our mind is, and begin to see the other side in it. So it's like if we're resistant against something, if we don't want something, don't like something, then we get stuck there if we just stay at not liking it or not wanting it or resisting it. We've all went over this 100 times in this class. And so there's a need to neutralize it, right? So that we just don't constantly get stuck there. Boom. So now we're seeing the other side of it. We need to see the value in the thing that we didn't like, resisted, or didn't want. So again and again in each one of these classes and each week, we hit on another side of I try to make them as universal as possible. A thing that we do with our mind that seems very noble and like a good thing, but actually is an experience of lack, or is actually a detraction, even though it has very noble intentions, like referring to the past, thinking about the past, or trying to understand, or looking for what's wrong to make it better. So each week we define lack in a new particular way. And I try to make them as universal as possible. And then we tried to balance that with the other side of it. What would begin to balance that? So seeing the value in what you didn't like is a way to balance the negative side of it. Or if it's the other side of it, the side of like, oh, I really want that, or the pleasure side of it, then it's like, well, we need to balance that too. Otherwise, our mind just keeps replaying that stuff over and over, and it solidifies with that emotional payoff that we get each time that it's played in our mind. And so there's a need to see how it's actually a detraction from the quality of our life to think about those things that give us pleasure. Now, once again, none of those things intrinsically are bad or good when we're experiencing them. But to be fantasizing or daydreaming or thinking about those things when they're not currently present is a detraction. So let's say we're back on this pleasure thing again, on the pleasure side of the spectrum, pleasure-pain side. And so on the pleasure side, it's like by thinking about this person, place, or thing that gives us pleasure, then it not only detracts from the quality of our present moment experience now, it not only detracts from the quality of our clear seeing now, it not only detracts from the love that we can offer another person now, or even the love that we can offer ourselves in the present moment experience now, but also thinking about that pleasurable thing, whenever you actually come to that person, place, or thing, you have so many thoughts about that person, place, or thing that you can't even be present with it when you get to it. So once again, that's a way to clearly see how the pleasure side of our thinking is a detraction, is experience of lack. So fascinating. I'm going to say it one more time. Not only whenever we think about those pleasure, positive things that we do want in our life, not only is it a detraction in our present moment now because we're not being present and really enjoying life, but it's also a detraction whenever, if and when we get that thing, because we've got so many thoughts about it that we can't even be present with it when we get it. So each week we have hit on a different way, a different definition of lack. That our mind thinks is a good thing, that our mind thinks is helping. that mind that always wants something. Really, we've called it the core of the ego. It always wants something or doesn't want something. Which the core of the ego down here, you could really consider it the not enough belief. That not enough belief always produces in our thinking, in terms of our thinking, it's manufactured in terms of stories in our thoughts. That not enough belief always produces you're not enough, so I don't want you. You're not enough, so I don't want this present moment situation. And here's the story about it. Or I want, this moment isn't enough, and so I want this instead. And so that the core of the ego, the manufacturer of these stories in our mind, how a situation is bad or not enough, stems from that not enough belief. Or you could even call it doubt. And in our last and final class today, that's what we're going to call it. Doubt. And now, typically in our experience in life, when people say, don't doubt yourself, what they're referring to is don't doubt your thinking. Just say what's on your mind and believe in it. But we're going to spin doubt in just a slightly other way, a slightly different way this time. This time in this class, we're going to look at doubt as in doubting the present moment. Doubting the wholeness of the present moment. And so when we have thoughts one way or the other and we're spinning around in our head, it's really a reconciling of the doubt that we have with the present moment. The present moment not being enough. We doubt the present moment. Yeah, doubt's the most dangerous of the 5 hindrances, Mike says. And so I want us to consider this. And if you guys have a pencil and piece of paper ready, I want you to consider this and maybe even write it down. You have everything you need in each present moment. Not before and not after. I'm going to say it again. You have everything you need in each present moment. Not before that moment and not after. If you're writing it down, I think this is really important, so I'm going to say it one more time. You have everything you need in each present moment. Not before and not after. So when we replay this idea in our minds, in light of thinking about a situation, trying to figure out what you're going to do in a situation tomorrow. Well, you don't know what the conditions will be like tomorrow. You don't know what the exact dynamic will be like tomorrow. You don't know of all the constituents that will be there, all the parts. But in that moment, you will have everything you need because you will see all the parts. It's like we're running this through our head of what we're going to say or how we're going to act or what we're going to do, what choice we're going to make tomorrow. But There's no and we're stirring this emotional storm up, but there's no possible way we can cope with it. Because we don't know what the exact constituents are. We don't know what the dynamic will be. You have everything you need in each present moment, not before. Same way with referring to something from the past. It's like thinking. It's not even really possible to even know of all the different parts that you took account for when you made the choice that you made. But yet later on, after that present moment, we try to take it apart and try to figure out why we made that choice we made. Well, we had everything we needed then. We were in the moment. We had the feeling tones. We had subconscious thoughts and unconscious thoughts that were automatically calculated in. These are the reasons why. We had everything we needed in that moment. We were calculating so many things. These are the reasons why things were said. It's like Mike at that stoplight. It's like, why didn't those people go? They were calculating things subconsciously that isn't even possible to know. It's not totally conscious. But in each present moment, we have everything we need. Not before and not after. This shines a different light on our habitual thinking processes. It starts to make it seem kind of, when we look at our thinking in the moment, in the light of, in the present moment, we have everything we need. Against seeing us think about either the past or the future, it starts to seem kind of ridiculous to even be thinking about it, or it's like you start to see that the thinking process is just the doubt. It's just the doubt in the present moment, which always gives us everything we need, like Mike at that stoplight. So this is a very important quote that I think can help our minds with doubt or overthinking or the polarities of the mind, however you want to word it. So through these past several weeks that we've done, I practice love versus lack. And we've been highlighting another more universal way that we use our mind that actually needs balancing. And so this is the silver line, this is the silver thread that has ran through all the classes. Is these things are noble on one degree and they're helpful on one degree, but also they need balancing. Otherwise, it's detracting our attention from the quality of the present moment experience we could have. It's like we're keeping that whole world alive with the emotional payoff and everything in each moment, in every single dang moment, and one side of the polarity feeds the other side. We're keeping that whole thing alive that we think life is. But when we let go of that doubt, which is the trying to figure things out, and trust that the present moment always provides what is needed, and then a whole different reality starts to open up. And these are those present moment experiences that we've had. So what the real takeaway from this whole course is, what are you thinking? What does your mind think about? How would you define that? And how could you balance that? What would its opposite be that would balance that? And this is the practice for the rest of our life, really. Our current momentum, our current practice has been whatever we want, we think about almost exclusively, oscillating and alternating throughout the day, throughout the week. But there's a real fixation on the things we want. And then very connected, but conversely, is the fixation on the things that we don't want. And we think about the thing that we don't want all throughout the day, alternatingly and oscillatingly. But really, these are the things that populate our mind that we think and through life seems like the way to move forward in life. And it does move you forward. However, there is a detraction aspect of it too. There is the quality and the aliveness and the life itself that is separate from our life story, which is all the thoughts that we're missing out on. Those are two separate things. Our life story, our life situation, and life. And we can balance our life stories by seeing the value in what you don't want and seeing how wanting what you want too much is a detraction, both now and later when you get it. We can balance those stories in our mind, begin to let them fall to the side and actually experience life directly, which is more of a sensory thing. And this is how we get to that space. If we cling too hard to the things that we want or push too hard to the things we don't want, then we miss out on actual life. While we're doubting the value in what the present moment is offering right now. When in reality, you have everything you need in each present moment. Once again, this thinking about things in our mind is very noble intentions. It's like we want that thing, so we think we should think about it to get it. But in actuality, how we get over here to this thing that we want is through each present moment activity. It's like when, say, you're 14 and you want a car, you will need to, well, if you think about how you won't be able to get that car by the time you're 16, the odds are you won't have that car. And so a more helpful, less detractive way than thinking how you won't have that car or how that person's just going to do that thing again, you know it. A more helpful thing than getting caught in our life story all the time is depositing into what creates life and where life is created, which is in the present moment now. So let's deposit into that instead. And each one of these very moments that we build to the highest degree possible, meaning not having the thoughts of doubt of how it's lacking, how it's not enough, each time we can have a present moment to the most quality degree possible, which once again is just not having thoughts of how it's lacking or not enough, then the more we can have, the more those present moments build to and move to the future that we really want. present moment is the only place that actual creation, actual life exists. And yet we're constantly trying to create in our minds. Instead, we're making the shift by seeing how everything needs balanced and how everything is a detraction if we go too haywire with it in our mind. By making the shift from that to placing the value, placing our attention more in the present moment, where everything is already given, where we have everything we need. And creating and moving life forward there, where actual life can be created, where actual life is created, which is in each present moment. But those thoughts will come in, won't they? And they'll be like, whoop, I'm so important. I have to figure out this person and their intentions and their antics, and I have to figure out how to get more of that situation and those people around that situation. I have to figure out how to get that thing and all the components around that thing. Like, those thoughts come up and they seem so important, and everything else is dropped. The seeing, honoring the present moment as having everything we need is dropped for the importance of those polarities of this moment isn't enough. It's like we start doubting that this moment is enough again. We start doubting that we have everything we need in this present moment. What if that was our main focus, though, to see how you have everything you need in each present moment? Then we'd start honoring the cycles of life. It's like, oh yeah, right now, after this webinar is over, for instance, nothing's happening. No one's around. I have everything I need, I guess. This is what I need in this moment. Cool. And just stay with that. And and maybe something will come up in our mind that, oh, wouldn't it be good if we also had this? And you can go do that. But what I am suggesting is maybe continue to practice you having everything that you need right now. Because each time that we honor I have everything I need, this is the present moment and I have everything that I need, that's what the present moment always offers, is everything I need. Then we gain more power into that. And then even while we're moving forward in our life, we're not moving forward out of lack or doubt or not having, but we're moving forward with a more sense of wholeness. I have everything I need, and my body's moving things forward. My mind's moving things forward. But unless we practice this every day, just sit and realize, oh, things are enough. The moment provides everything I need. Not before and not after. So if I don't have it now, then I don't need it now. Have everything that I need. The present moment always provides everything I need. Jesus had some pretty good parables about that. this really is too the only way out of pain. Balancing the polarities in our thinking, which we've went into that 100 times. Seeing the value in what you don't want, seeing how what you do want is actually a detraction now and later, unless you balance it. You can have all these things, but to overwant them is a detraction now, and then also a detraction when you get it. To see how that's so. These are the way out of pain. You can still have everything you want, but within our thinking, they need to be neutralized. In the present moment, when you're offered everything you need, including the decision to say yes, the ability to say yes, I want that, whenever the opportunity arises, you'll have that. You have everything you need in each present moment. You can still have it. But now, when that thing's not happening, we neutralize it. And this is the way to not cause yourself pain any longer. Each present moment, you'll have everything you need, not before it happens, not before the moment, and not after. And so really what we've been doing, you could say all these weeks of this class, is learning how to surrender. Learning how to let go. Learning how to forgive. All these highest spiritual qualities. So, instead of just saying the words, go surrender, or go practice forgiveness. It's like each one of these classes was another way how to do that. Surrender, stop trying to understand due to seeing what a detraction trying to understand can be. How is she going to practice it unless your mind can let go of it? And how is she going to let go of it unless your mind can legitimately see how it's not helpful? And so that's what each one of these classes in a different way was showing us, is how to let go, how to forgive, how to surrender mentally. That's what the focus always is, mentally. So, for our very last portion of our very last class, what I want us to do is get out our pen, pencil, and piece of paper again. And I want you to write on that piece of paper this. I want you to define what you notice your mind thinking about often, in your own words. I've been doing it in my own words with what I can see is universally true, that people think about all the time. But in your own words, that would hit home best for you, how would you define what your mind is often thinking about? I'm sorry, I've got to say this. This is so interesting. It's kind of like talking to a 10-year-old. It's like, I promise there's more to life than video games and soda pop. If you can just grow up and if you can just let go of those things, then some amazing other things will start. And then it's like the person's 15 years old, and then he's 20 years old, and he's 25 years old, and 30, and 35, and 40, and he's still video games and soda pop. It's like, I promise you, if you can just let go of those things, something else will fill its place that is way better. And this is those thoughts that entrap us. So what are those thoughts that define your life? If everyone could let me know if they have something down, that would be great. Mike's got his. Lynn's got hers.
I've got mine.
Great. Bye, Mark. Carolyn, do you have yours? Just making sure you're still with us.
Yeah.
You have yours?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, now next, discern. Is that a thought you don't want? And so, let me restate. Next, discern, is that a thought I don't want? Or is that a thought that I am wanting? So is it on, which side of the polarity is it on? You could define it as want, don't want, good, bad, right, wrong, pain, pleasure, whatever makes sense to you. And let me know when you're done.
Got it.
Great.
Ready?
Okay.
Ready?
Great.
Okay.
Okay. And then lastly, we're going to balance that thought with its opposite. So, if it's one that you don't want, we need to start seeing the value in it to balance it. So, write down that value thought to help balance it. Or if you're on the other side of the spectrum and it's something that you do want, then write down how it could be a detraction from overthinking about it.
Done.
Okay,
Done.
great.
Got it.
Okay,
Yep.
great. So question, did you guys have any problems with creating the opposite thought that you think would balance? That you think would balance it?
A little bit.
Okay.
It seemed kind of weird.
Uh-huh. What about you, Lynn? Looks like you're about to say something.
Oh yeah. Actually, I didn't. I saw it came to me fairly easily. I see where I was coming from. So.
Cool. Okay. What about you, Rodney? Was it? Is it difficult? Is this clear? Was it difficult?
So not necessarily. So if it for something I don't want, it wasn't necessarily difficult to see. Okay, history of momentum perspective. I can see how at one point that may have been a valuable, way to be or react.
Mm-hmm.
So not difficult to see value there, but also I'm not like, yay, that's amazing.
Right. Yeah, here's the other thing too, though, is I think this is really meant for and really helpful to just free ourselves up so we can be present in a moment, not necessarily with that person, place, or thing. That's a different kind of thing. This is just to help us free ourselves up in our own present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's from that space that we can perceive more deeply into whatever we want, or perceive more deeply into whatever choice we would want to make. So really, it's to help us to let go and surrender so we can perceive more deeply, so we can see more clearly. So yeah, you may not be happy with, even though you've come to some resolution with it, you may not be happy with it. Okay, good. Or we may still, the point is that we work ourselves free with this technique. It's up to us to really want to be free. And it starts out when we're by ourselves, usually. It starts out with finally really getting tired of the way that we're feeling, and even the emotional payoff that we keep triggering again and again. and wanting to be free of these things. And sometimes, though, we can't or won't, and either way's fine, let go of the things in our life that gives us pain, or we don't want to even let go of the things in life that give us pain. Well, if we don't, we've got to figure out some way that we can survive in it then, and this is the way, is being able to work the polarities in our mind to balance each thought that as it arises, so they can just begin to be there and not bother us when they come up. And when they come up, we do the balancing again, and then they kind of can go away, so we can enjoy our life and trust that in every present moment what is needed is there. And this is the practice for the rest of our lives. It is the identifying, just like we just did, what our thinking is. And it's helpful to define it as objectively as possible. Is this trying to understand thinking? Well, what are the... How is trying to understand actually a detraction? So, and whenever we get to that conclusion and try to balance it, then understanding is seen more clearly. And but if that didn't resolve it and we're still thinking about the thing, well then it wasn't trying to understand. That was the main problem. And so maybe we look at it was trying to be right. And so now we see the other side of trying to be right, and to balance that energy of thought of trying to be right. And then maybe if we balance that, then see if that thought still keeps coming up of that situation or that person, place, or thing. And if it doesn't, then okay, that must have been it. That was the thing. But if it does still keep coming up, then maybe we need to look at it a little bit differently again. Am I compulsively looking for what's wrong am I trying to make things better? And so begin to balance, have the counter thought to balance how making things better, that movement of thought isn't all that helpful. And so we have to constantly be like trying to balance the thoughts that come up when they get a little too heavy. And you know the ones that get a little too heavy. And then, so it's like objectively identifying these things. Maybe we don't clearly say like, this person, place, or thing did this. Maybe instead it's more of like, okay, what is this thing that I keep doing with this situation? Not fair? Is that what I keep doing? This is not fair? Well, then maybe we need to balance fairness. Maybe we need to look a little more deeper with fairness. So what am I doing with this situation? What am I doing with this person, place, or thing? Objectively identify that thought, so that way we can see the other side of it and try to balance it. How that thought movement isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Not wanting that person, place, or thing, or wanting that person, place, or thing. So it's gonna be a balancing process. Did you unmute, Mike?
Yeah, I was just changing my mind. You know, we were trying to make this balance between what we don't want in our lives and what we do want in our lives. We're actually changing the history of momentum of that particular thought.
Yeah.
Or issue. And so, and I wonder, we call it making a balance. I'd rather get rid of the negative thought and keep the positive thought in its place, which to me doesn't say balance, but you know, we're changing something. Even though we say we don't change the history of momentum, and in fact we are, because we're changing our perception of it by changing the thought into a positive one. Yeah.
That's really good, Mike.
That just popped into what you were talking about there.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, guys? You know, one other thing that came to my thinking from way earlier was something that you said, Rodney, about trying to understand why you attracted something into your life. And that's another one of those things that has its place. And also, that's also another one of those things that our mind can get a little overboard on. And so that would be even a thought that I would try to neutralize. Once again, not think it's bad, but just see the other side of it, how looking in that way can be a detraction. However, you may be using it as a tool too. It may be authentically a tool to understand the situation, to relieve the situation. Or once again, it may be even that attempt to try to mentally understand your way through something that may be that may need the balancing, that may be, you know, causing any possible sticking points.
So, if it is a mentalization, then what is the balancing of that? If I'm like, okay, how have I attracted this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it's kind of like an overthinking. How have I attracted this in my life? Once again, it's kind of like objectively, this is just what objectively seeing, what is this type of thinking producing for me? That's it. Is this type of thinking really producing something for me? No, not even that. What is this type of thinking producing for me? And so actually see, is it producing relief or is it producing more tension? So how did I attract this situation, person, place, or thing into my life? What does that produce in me? How do I feel?
Are you wanting me to answer that, or is that a subject? Yeah.
I'm just talking out loud. If you want to answer, you can.
Yeah.
But I'm talking out loud.
No, I know you are. So. But for me, I actually feel empowered.
Okay.
And more, basically more aware of my mental, spiritual, and vibrational state.
Right.
And it oftentimes points me back to caring for that more. And so it's not really like, oh, how have I done this? Like kicking myself. It's not that necessarily. It's more taking responsibility for it. I don't know if that even remotely makes sense, but it does to me. So
it does make sense. It does. Good. Well, that's the thing to be aware of, if it's empowering or not. So if it feels empowering, then there isn't necessarily the need to neutralize it if it's a forward-moving thought. But what I often recognize within myself is that it doesn't do that. What I've noticed within myself is it's a kind of cyclical thing where just again and again I think about it. Or it's like I keep looking at it from a million different little angles. And then it's like after days of doing that, it's like, where have I actually gone with this?
Yes, I do that. I do a lot of that thinking too.
Yeah, right.
But that's a little different.
Cool, awesome. Well, that's perfect, because that's what we're doing, is we're just defining these things for ourselves.
Okay, so on that line of thinking that you were just talking about, that isn't fruitful. I'll say.
Yeah.
Then what's the balancing? What's the other side then? Because you know.
Oh yeah. Well, I think the ultimate. Please go ahead. Say more.
I was just going to use that as an example.
Okay. Yeah. So I think the ultimate goal is to recognize that what is needed is in the present moment. You have everything you need in each present moment. And so I think we want to get away from the focus of our whole day being trying to figure out our life. And instead, the focus of our day being to experience life. And so whatever you need to do, whatever I need to do, whatever we need to do in our thinking in order to actually experience life, because that's not the normal dang momentum. What the normal momentum of humans is, really all of the day, but I'll be like reserved and say the majority of our day is caught up in repetitive thinking that only continues to fortify a certain emotional feel that they carry with them all through the day. And so what we want to do instead is to begin to trust that the present moment provides what is needed. So it's like in the present moment, I'll know what to say. I don't have to think about it prior, and I don't have to think about it after. I'll know what to say because I'll have everything that's needed. And so then there isn't, as we move through our day, there isn't the compulsive trying to figure things out or working things out in our head or replaying what had happened a week ago or a year ago. It's that we trust that the present moment is created now, and in each act of creation, what is needed is here. I don't have to doubt that in my thinking. And so we stop trying to figure things out. We just experience life more directly. But we can't just stop trying to figure things out. We need to see how it could possibly, we have to want to even be able to see this. We have to want to be able to see how it could even be a detraction to be thinking about things all day long. And we do that by coming up with what that possibility could be. If I really want to understand the situation, but yet what I want even deeper is to experience life directly, then I have to see how it's actually a detraction to want to understand the situation. I have to try to see and imagine how it could be a detraction to try to understand this person, place, or thing. And then I stop, and then I give up on it. That's surrender. And then I get to experience life directly. So this is the goal. Does that make sense? Does that seem like something anyone would want?
Yes.
Cool, good. Well, that is the homework then, if you will, for our last final love versus lack class, which is to begin to define ways that we see that our thinking is as objectively as possible, kind of like I did during this thing. Am I trying to understand? Am I trying to be right? Am I looking for what's wrong to make it better? What is the momentum of my thinking? Define that. And we're going to do this for the rest of our life. Define it so that way we can see which side is it on. Is it on the want or don't want side? And then we'll have the thought to balance that. Whether it's creating value for something you don't want or seeing how it's actually a detraction to be thinking about this thing that you do want. And then that's the platform. That's the way down That's the process of surrender. That's the process to even start to get us in a space where our mind is surrendering. So this is the practice for the rest of our life. And also, while you guys move through this, I would like, if anyone has any experiences or any questions or any concerns on this process more, to please let me know. Please get a hold of me. Please give me a call or a text or whatever, because I would love to hear what people are coming up against when they're trying to do this. It's important. And it's helpful for me to know too. Okay, you guys, any other thoughts? It's approaching our hour-and-a-half mark. Does anyone else have any thoughts or parting words or anything at all? Mike says, thank you, Brian, for your willingness to be my teacher. Looking forward to the next set of lessons. Oh, you're so sweet, Mike. Yeah, there will be something in the future for sure. It'll probably be about 2 weeks down the pipeline. It might be called The Meditative Mind. I haven't discerned for sure what the next course is going to be, but it might be called The Meditative Mind. Because that's where all this mindfulness stuff that we've been doing, and that's where all this love versus lack surrender stuff is moving us towards, is the working understanding of how to be more present, or the working understanding of being with exactly what is, or the working understanding of the meditative mind. So that may be our next focus. We'll see what happens. Stella says, thank you, you're welcome, Lynn. All right, Carolyn, do you have any parting words? Rodney, do you have any parting words?
No, just this has been an awesome class and super beneficial.
Good.
Thank you.
Awesome, you're welcome. Carolyn?
Definitely interesting and for sure different. I mean, some of the ways that you were pointing things out, it was like, yeah, but then other times it's like, wait a minute, what?
I know. Yep. Cool. All right, you guys, I love you a ton, and I will see you guys soon. Have a good night, everyone.